In 1998, a newlywed couple boarded a midnight ferry across Lake Michigan and vanished before sunrise. No splashes, no goodbyes, just an untouched rental car. And silence. For 25 years, the case remained cold, until a diver surfaced with a wedding veil tangled in a sunken wreck, and everything unraveled. What investigators uncovered beneath the water wasn't just one missing couple. It was a trail of disappearances, and a man who had always been there, watching. The wind was sharp that night, rolling off the lake like breath from a cold god. Emily Stokes stood at the edge of the ferry, her white dress ghosting behind her, veil caught in the breeze. Her husband, Daniel, had just stepped away to grab the champagne. She waited, smiling. Somewhere in the shadows of the deck, a man watched her. No one ever heard her scream. No alarms were raised. By morning, their rental car sat alone in the parking lot. Engine cold, 2 wedding bands left behind, and a silence that would last 25 years. Until now. The lake was black that night. Not the kind of darkness that comes with sleep, but the bottomless sort. The kind that swallows sound, smothers light, and makes you question if the earth beneath you is still there at all. Emily Stokes stood at the bow of the ferry, her veil fluttering in the wind, one hand wrapped around the rail and the other clutching a champagne flute. It was just past midnight. The engine thrummed beneath her feet. The water stretched endless in every direction, moonless and cold. Daniel was somewhere behind her, laughing with one of the groomsmen who'd hitched a late ride back toward Muskegon. Most of their guests had driven home hours earlier. Only a few lingered now, tipsy, tired, and tucked away inside the ferry's cabin. She didn't blame them. It was bitter out here. The midnight crossing was their idea, a quiet escape after a whirlwind wedding day in Milwaukee. Just the 2 of them, floating across the lake toward their rented lakeside cabin. No noise, no expectations, no photographers. Only the water and the promise of forever. The ferry cut through the black like a ghost ship. Its deck lights dimmed to near nothing, the hum of its passage nearly drowned by the wind. Emily pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her dress shimmered faintly under the floodlights, layers of lace and silk catching every stray gust. Behind her, footsteps, familiar ones. Daniel appeared, holding the champagne bottle, grinning. "There you are," he said. "I was starting to think you bailed." She smiled. "Just needed a second." He leaned against the rail beside her, his tuxedo jacket flapping open, tie loosened, hair a little messier than it had been in the wedding photos. His face was flushed from the cold and the champagne. "This is crazy," he murmured, gazing out into the blackness. "You ever think about how deep this water is?" Emily arched a brow. "Romantic." "I mean it," he said, his tone suddenly thoughtful. "We're just floating on top of it, and below us it's like a mile of cold nothing." "Stop," she nudged him. "You're creeping me out." He chuckled. "I'm serious. There are wrecks down there, you know, boats, planes, even cars. Whole worlds just gone." Emily turned to him slowly, the wind catching her veil and blowing it across his chest like a ribbon. "Then I'm glad I'm up here with you," she said softly. They kissed, the kind of kiss born from exhaustion and happiness and adrenaline all tangled into one. A voice echoed faintly across the deck, one of the crew announcing arrival time. 30 minutes, Daniel said. "Come on, let's go inside before you freeze." She hesitated, looking out over the water one last time. "I'll meet you there," she said. "I just want to breathe a little longer." He smiled, nodded, and disappeared back toward the cabin, his footsteps swallowed by the wind. Emily leaned on the rail. 30 minutes. She watched the water shift and churn, her veil dancing around her face, her bare fingers tingling from the cold. Somewhere far in the distance, the dim red blink of a navigation buoy flashed. the only light in the dark. She never saw the figure step into view behind her, and by the time the ferry docked at Muskegon, the car was still in the parking lot. The champagne bottle sat half empty on the table inside the cabin. Her shawl lay folded neatly on the passenger seat. But Emily and Daniel were gone, vanished into the night. Without a splash, without a sound, as if they'd never been there at all. The rental was still there when the sun came up. A silver Toyota Camry, spotless and newly issued, sat parked exactly where the manifest had listed it. Slot 22. Upper Ferry Lot, Muskegon Terminal. Morning mist curled along its roof. Dew collected on the windshield in a faint, cold sheen. The doors were locked, the interior undisturbed. A folded navy shawl rested on the passenger seat, perfectly centered. In the back, an overnight bag, a garment bag containing a tuxedo, and a bouquet of wilting wedding flowers. Detective Riley Voss stood over the vehicle, arms crossed, his breath visible in the early light. He'd reviewed the case files countless times over the past 15 years. One of those cold cases that never thawed, no matter how much heat the press had poured on it. A newlywed couple, a midnight ferry ride. 2 vanished souls, no evidence of foul play, no bodies, no confirmed witnesses. Just a missing bride and groom, and a car that never left. Now, in 2024, a phone call had dragged it all back to the surface. Voss glanced down at the faded case folder he'd brought with him, its edges soft from years of handling. A small post-it fluttered in the breeze. Diver contacted us. Claims he found bridal fabric on submerged wreck. Possible connection. T. Andrus, CID bridal fabric. He looked back at the ferry, now loading for the morning crossing. It hadn't changed much in 25 years. Same dull paint, same rust lining the undercarriage. The name was still visible across the bow in chipped letters. SS Manitou Crossing. He closed the folder and made his way toward the docks. The dive shop smelled like neoprene and brine. Elijah Mears stood behind the counter, sorting through a bucket of gear, his wetsuit pulled halfway down around his waist. He was younger than Voss expected, maybe 30, with sun-darkened skin and eyes that squinted from habit. A diver's tan, calloused hands. No-nonsense demeanor. "You the detective?" he asked without looking up. "Voss, cold case unit." Elijah nodded. "Thought no one'd show. Usually when people disappear on the lake, they stay disappeared." Voss stepped closer. "You said you found something." "Yeah, out near the North Shoals. I was doing a sonar sweep of a known wreck, old tugboat from the 40s. Depths about 200 feet. He reached under the counter and pulled out a sealed evidence bag. Inside, a torn scrap of white lace, waterlogged and darkened at the edges. Voss held it up to the light. "It caught on the winch cable while I was surfacing," Elijah said. "It's bridal lace. You can see the stitching. Might have been a veil or train." Voss studied the pattern. Delicate, intricate. Faded now, but unmistakable. Emily Stokes had worn something like this. "You said it snagged on a wreck." "Yeah," Elijah said, pulling up a digital tablet. "This here's a sonar still of the tug. You can see the upper deck here, and this shape underneath." Voss leaned in. It was hard to make out, but there was something there. Not part of the tug. Smaller. Angular. A vehicle? "I didn't dive that far," Elijah said. "Visibility was garbage, but there's something resting against the port side." "You're sure this was at the North Shoals?" 4 miles off the ferry's usual path," Elijah said, tapping a set of coordinates. "But if something heavy went overboard, tide could have dragged it, or it was dropped there intentionally." Voss exhaled slowly. "You thinking this ties to your ferry case?" Elijah asked. "We had a bride and groom vanish without a trace. Only thing left was the car, and a shawl. And now you've got lace," Elijah said. "From a wreck no one's cataloged fully. Someone might have dumped something out there years ago thinking it'd never be found." "Then we'll find it," Voss said. He turned toward the door, mind already racing. This wasn't just some dive shop tip. This could be the first real break in 25 years. And if that scrap of lace belonged to Emily Stokes, then the lake had just given up its first secret. The lake was calmer than usual that morning, its surface smooth, almost glass-like, disturbed only by the hum of the dive boat cutting a slow arc toward the North Shoals. Gray clouds loomed overhead, casting a flat silvery light across the water. The sun hadn't fully broken through, and the air smelled like iron and salt, and something colder still, depth. Elijah Mears checked the oxygen gauges again, his dive tank secured snugly across his shoulders. The winch groaned beside him, cable already deployed with sonar lines sweeping wide across the dark. Riley Voss sat nearby in the wheelhouse, eyes glued to the monitor. The sonar image pulsed in real time, outlines shifting, grainy. The old tugboat appeared as a skeletal outline on screen, faint ridges, a slumped upper deck, and then just below it. There, that shape again. Too angular to be natural, too boxy to be part of the wreck. A vehicle. Elijah emerged from the cabin, zipped his wetsuit to the collar, and adjusted his headlamp. "Visibility down there's awful," he said. "Silt shelf, sediment drift, current from the west. Couldn't see my own hand last time." "Just get eyes on what's under that tug," Voss said. "If it's what I think it is, this case just changed." Elijah gave a short nod and dropped backward into the water with a clean splash, vanishing beneath the surface. The silence that followed was deep. Voss watched the ripples fade, watched the bubbles trail. The lake swallowed him whole. It was colder than Elijah expected. Even through layers of thermal protection, the water bit at his limbs like needles. He descended slowly, beam from his headlamp slicing through the pitch as the pressure built against his mask. He moved past the warped hull of the tug, its paint long stripped by time and rust. Algae hung like curtains from its railings. Fish darted through shattered portholes, their silver bodies flickering in and out of view. And then, there it was. The object partially buried in lakebed silt, tilted against the tug's starboard side. It was a car, or what was left of one. The front was crushed, likely from impact or time. The windows were clouded with algae and grime. A thin layer of sediment blanketed the roof. Elijah circled, moving carefully, each kick of his fins sending clouds of silt blooming into the void. On the passenger side, caught under a twisted piece of frame, something moved with the current. He adjusted his headlamp. It was cloth, thin, delicate, lacework. He reached out, fingers brushing it. It crumbled at the edges but held enough structure to confirm what he already knew. A bridal veil. He angled his flashlight upward. The interior was murky, but a shadow lay across the front seat. He shifted slightly, bringing the light around, and froze. Bone, a femur, white against the dark, lodged between collapsed metal and sediment. The rest was obscured, tangled in debris. Elijah's breath caught. A moment later, the comms crackled in his ear. "Status?" "Voss." "I found it," he whispered. "It's a car, mid-size, submerged maybe 25 years. One body visible inside, female frame. There's lace. It's her." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Ascend. We're calling recovery." Elijah turned his headlamp off and began to rise, the car slowly vanishing into shadow below. The tugboat sat like a silent witness, half buried in silt, its rusted hull guarding secrets no one was supposed to find. As he broke the surface, the wind had picked up. The sky had darkened. A storm was coming. And the lake, for the first time in decades, had just spoken. The conference room at the Muskegon Police Department still smelled faintly of whiteboard markers and stale coffee. Detective Riley Voss sat alone at the head of the long table, case files spread before him like a forensic map of memory. Newspaper clippings, photographs, The original ferry manifest from 1998. Its ink faded and the edges yellowing with time. He'd spent the morning cross-referencing names. 52 passengers had boarded the SS Manitou crossing on the night of June 6, 1998. 50 were accounted for by ID or ferry pass. 2 were not. 2 anonymous boardings. It wasn't unusual back then. Ferry regulations were looser. A paper ticket could be bought with cash, no ID required. Most people didn't think twice about it, until someone went missing. Voss circled the entries with a red pen. Ticket number 49,211, no name. Ticket number 49,212, no name. They had been sold at 11:39 p.m., 21 minutes before departure. A last-minute cash sale at the Milwaukee Dockside Terminal. No receipt. Just a booth operator's initials, long retired. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the manifest. Emily and Daniel's names were there. Daniel Stokes had signed for both. They'd arrived early, parked their rental car, boarded together. Witnesses confirmed it. But now a new question hovered like smoke. Who were the other two? Kate Stokes hadn't stepped inside a police station since her sister vanished. Now she sat in the same room as Voss, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. At 41, she still carried the sharp, bright energy she had in college, but there was a weight behind her eyes now. Years of grief compacted into something resilient. "I didn't think I'd ever hear from anyone again," she said. "I'm sorry for the delay," Voss replied. "But we may have something." He pushed the evidence bag across the table. Inside, the lace fragment retrieved by Elijah Mears. Kate reached out slowly, fingers brushing the plastic. "It's hers," she whispered. "I remember the pattern. She picked it because it reminded her of our grandmother's veil." Voss gave her a moment. Elijah also found a car, submerged, body inside, female, still waiting on dental records for confirmation. Kate exhaled sharply but didn't cry. "Daniel?" she asked. "No sign of him, yet." She nodded, as if she already expected it, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "I found this going through Dad's things last week. He passed in January. I didn't know he still had it." Voss opened the envelope carefully. Inside, an undeveloped roll of 35mm film and a wedding program from June 6, 1998. Kate hesitated before adding, "There are photos on that roll we never saw. The camera went missing that night, and I guess he thought it might be too painful to develop." Voss stood, already moving toward evidence processing. "We'll get the film developed immediately. You'll be the first to see the prints." Kate's voice stopped him. "You think she was taken, don't you?" "I think something happened that night no one wanted to explain," he said. "And I think someone else was on that ferry. Someone who shouldn't have been." The photos came back 3 hours later. Most were what you'd expect. Blurry shots of the reception. Emily laughing on the dance floor. Daniel in a tux, kissing her forehead under strings of lights. A few pictures captured the ferry dock, guests waving, the couple walking up the ramp hand in hand. And then came a photo Voss didn't expect. Taken from across the ferry lot, likely snapped in a rush. A man stood near the edge of the boarding line. Leather coat, hands in pockets, eyes obscured by shadow. His posture was stiff, alert, watching. No one recognized him. He appeared in no guest list, no registry, not even in the ferry's partial manifest. Kate leaned forward, brow furrowed. "He's not family, not a friend. I don't know who that is." Voss stared at the man's silhouette. "Then we found our first ghost." The photograph lay on the desk beneath a magnifying glass, its edges curled slightly from the heat of the developer. The man in the leather coat stood near the edge of the ferry ramp, half shrouded in shadow, his face turned just enough to be obscured. He wasn't waving. He wasn't smiling. He was simply watching, still, intent, as if he were waiting for something or someone. Detective Riley Voss leaned closer. There was something about the man's posture. Upright, composed, the tilt of the head too deliberate to be casual. This wasn't someone lost or confused. It was someone who knew exactly where he was going. He turned to the wall behind him, where a copy of the 1998 manifest was tacked beside the new evidence. 48 names with IDs. 2 anonymous ticket sales, no security footage, no boarding video, at least not anymore. The terminal had upgraded systems in 2001 and overwritten the original tapes. The ghosts had moved through a blind spot. Voss picked up the phone and dialed. Kate Stokes answered on the third ring. "I'm at my parents' house," she said. "Sorting through storage. There's still boxes of wedding stuff in the basement." "Save everything," Voss said. "Photos, letters, guest lists, even napkins." "Napkins? I'm not joking. Anything with handwriting. You'd be surprised what shows up in ink when we analyze it under light." Kate hesitated. "There's something else." Voss straightened. "Go on." "I found a second set of wedding photos in an album I didn't recognize. They're from another couple's wedding, a friend of Emily's from college. I remember the bride's name, Callie Andrews. Her wedding was a month before Emily's, also lakeside. And..." Kate's voice dropped. "The same man, leather coat, same posture. He's in the background of one of their pictures, standing near the pier." The line went silent. Voss swallowed. "You're sure?" "Same face, same building, it's him." "I need those photos." "I already scanned them," Kate said. "Check your inbox." The photo arrived seconds later, and there he was, again. Different angle, different lighting, but unmistakable. Same leather coat, same distant stare. The kind of presence you wouldn't notice until after something bad happened. Voss forwarded the image to facial recognition. He got nothing back. No DMV match, no military ID, no prison record, not even a passport ping. Whoever the man in the leather coat was, he didn't want to be found. And that meant he probably had something to hide. That night, Voss returned to the manifest again, not to look at names, but at gaps. He laid the man's photos side by side and placed them above the manifest printout. Callie Andrews' wedding, Emily Stokes' wedding, both held near Lake Michigan. Both captured this man loitering near the docks, not interacting, just observing. 2 anonymous ticket purchases on the night of Emily's disappearance. Was the second person with him or another target? He circled a note in the file. 1994. George and Natalie James disappear on the ferry night run. No witnesses, no bodies. Case unresolved. 1 cash ticket unclaimed. 3 couples, all on the same midnight route. All vanished, all with him in the background. Voss exhaled slowly, the weight of it settling. This wasn't coincidence. It was pattern. And the man in the leather coat, he was part of something bigger. Something that had been riding those waves for years, slipping aboard under the cover of darkness, choosing victims, vanishing into the lake before dawn. The evidence locker was silent except for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Voss stood in front of the dehumidifying chamber, watching as technicians carefully extracted the corroded remains of a vintage underwater camera from its padded container. It had taken Elijah Mears 3 dives and a set of custom retrieval tools to get it out without further damaging the fragile housing. The camera had been wedged beneath a collapsed storage bin on the lake bed, just a few feet from the sunken car. Its film compartment still sealed. The casing was pitted with rust, its label unreadable. But inside was the past, possibly intact. "Forensics says the film's salvageable," the tech said, hands gloved, breath slow. "We're going to try a chemical restoration process, but it'll be grainy. Don't expect miracles." "I'm not looking for miracles," Voss muttered. "Just proof." 48 hours later, the first recovered photographs flickered to life on a backlit screen in the forensics lab. They were blurry, greenish, washed with silt damage and shadow. But shapes began to emerge. Figures, faces, outlines of movement frozen in grain. One by one, the moments from that lost night came back. A couple on the ferry deck, Emily in her lace-trimmed dress, Daniel leaning close to her shoulder. Flashbulb lighting. Another image of Emily, alone now, near the edge of the deck railing, her face turned, smiling. And then, another photo. Voss leaned in. His pulse ticked. Emily was no longer smiling. Her face was tight with unease. Her hand was not resting on the railing. It was being held by someone else. The man beside her was only half in frame, cropped at the shoulder, but what could be seen was unmistakable. Dark coat, high collar, fingers wrapped around her wrist. The man in the leather coat. Voss froze the image and enhanced the frame digitally, adjusting light curves and sharpening. The face remained mostly obscured, but the shape of his jaw, the proximity to Emily, the tension in her arm. This was not a casual encounter. This was confrontation. He printed the image and brought it to Kate. She stared at it for a long time. "That's her," she whispered. She looked scared. "She didn't fall overboard," Voss said. "She didn't run. Someone approached her. Someone followed her onto that ferry." Kate's voice was a rasp. "And he touched her. Held her. Pulled her. Maybe worse. We don't know what happened between this moment and when the car ended up in the lake. But we know this. She wasn't alone." She took a breath, steadying herself. "So where's Daniel in all this?" Voss nodded solemnly. "That's the next piece." That night, Voss combed through Daniel Stokes's background. No criminal record, no history of abuse or control. By all accounts, he was devoted to Emily. No signs of trouble in their short marriage. And yet, he'd vanished too. If Daniel had witnessed the interaction, had he intervened, fought back, died trying? Or had the man in the leather coat done something far more calculated, eliminating them both to leave no witnesses? Voss circled one question in his notebook. Why dump the car, but keep the bodies separate? There was only one logical answer, because someone didn't want the story to be told. And one of those stories, maybe the most important, was still missing. The office was dim, the air thick with the scent of old case files and forgotten grief. Detective Riley Voss sat at his desk, surrounded by ferry logs and newspaper clippings yellowed with age. A map of Lake Michigan lay spread before him, marked with red circles. 4 of them. 4 disappearances. Same ferry, same route, same time of night. Each one explained away with a different excuse. Lovers' quarrel, suicide pact, accidental drowning. But none of them held water, not anymore. He dragged a line between the dots, tracing a shape. Not random, not scattered, pattern. The only constant? The Manitou Crossing. Voss drove north, out of Muskegon, following a tip from a retired officer who'd worked port security in the 1990s. The man now lived alone in a trailer on the outskirts of Manistee, half-blind and sharp-tongued, but his memory, when it clicked, was precise. "You don't forget that kind of silence," the old man had said. "Ferry comes in at 3 a.m., sky still dark, air wet. But this one night, back in '94, the boat was too quiet. He'd found a wedding bouquet floating near the shoreline the next morning. Brushed it off. Told no one. And now, 30 years later, it was haunting him." Back at the station, Voss pulled the archived report from June 18th, 1994. George and Natalie James, newlyweds, disappeared during the midnight crossing. Car never found. Ferry staff assumed they never boarded, but the manifest listed their names. No security footage survived. Another couple. Same circumstances. Same void. But there was one line in the old police notes that caught Voss's eye. Ticket number 41,119 listed as James G. Ticket number 41,120 purchased in cash at terminal. No name attached. Another nameless boarding. Another shadow. Voss tapped his pen. 4 disappearances. Always at night, always on the Manitou crossing, and always someone unaccounted for. Was this a killer who rode the ferry under darkness, selecting couples at random? Or were the couples never random at all? Kate Stokes called later that afternoon. "I found something," she said. Her voice trembled with barely contained urgency. "In one of Emily's boxes, a wedding keepsake. I almost missed it." It was a paper napkin, sealed inside a plastic sleeve. At first glance, it looked like nothing, just a standard reception napkin with the couple's names embossed in gold. But on the back, written in rushed, uneven script, I saw him again. The man from Callie's wedding. He was near the ferry ramp, watching. Emily's handwriting, dated the night before she vanished. "She saw him," Kate said, voice cracking. She knew something was wrong. Voss sat back in his chair, staring at the napkin. "This was never about a random encounter," he murmured. "He was following them. And maybe not just them." Voss pulled out a manila folder labeled Unsolved, Ferry Disappearances, and opened it to a buried note from 1992. A crewman's report, disregarded at the time. Passenger reported a man pacing on the upper deck. Said he wasn't with anyone, wouldn't make eye contact, got off before docking. Another ghost. Another year. How many couples had boarded that ferry thinking it was just a quiet way home? A peaceful ride across the lake? How many vanished without a trace while he stayed hidden in the blind spots of the system? Voss marked a final note on his board. He didn't just pick victims, he hunted them. And now, after all these years, his trail was starting to surface. The diner off Route 31 hadn't changed in 3 decades. Red vinyl booths, clinking silverware, and the smell of burnt coffee baked into the wallpaper. Voss slid into a booth across from the man who'd called himself R.J. Parker, a name Voss suspected wasn't real, but one he wouldn't challenge. Not yet. R.J. was thin, sallow, in his late 60s. The hands that wrapped around his coffee mug were trembling, not just from age, but from memory. His jacket was patched at the elbow. His eyes flicked to the windows more than once. "You said you worked the Manitou crossing," Voss began. R.J. gave a dry laugh. "A long time ago. I stopped in 99. Just couldn't keep pretending." "Pretending what?" The man's gaze lifted. "Steady now. That it was just a job. That what I saw didn't matter." Voss leaned forward. "Tell me." R.J. inhaled, then spoke low and measured. It was the summer of 98. Warm night, calm water. I was working the upper deck shift, mostly just keeping couples from sneaking off behind the life raft lockers. But that night, something was off. The way the wind died. The way the engine seemed to hum a little too loud. Voss stayed quiet. He knew better than to interrupt the unraveling of long-buried guilt. "I saw a guy, leather coat, standing alone on the starboard side. He hadn't come from the lounge, wasn't with the car passengers either, just appeared." "Describe him," Voss said. "Tall, late 30s, maybe 40. Pale, moved quiet. You know how some people make noise when they walk? Not him. He floated. And he was alone." R.J. nodded. "That's what bothered me. Everyone else had someone, a friend, a date, a spouse. This guy, he watched the couples. Did anyone else notice?" R.J.'s jaw clenched. "I told my supervisor, asked if anyone logged him boarding. He shrugged, told me to forget it, said I was probably imagining things." Voss leaned in. "What happened next?" The deckhand stared at his coffee like it held a secret. "I heard a sound, like metal scraping, then a splash, near the rear cargo ramp. I radioed it in, protocol, but they told me not to worry. Said the loading mechanisms groan like that sometimes. You think it was something else?" "I know it was," R.J. whispered. "When we docked, I checked the ramp controls. One of the locking pins had been pulled loose, not worn down, removed." Voss's heart picked up. "Did you file a report?" I tried. 2 days later, I was reassigned to maintenance. Then 3 weeks later, I was let go. They said budget cuts, but I knew. Knew what? That someone had seen too much. Back at the station, Voss logged the conversation into his notes. He added a new name to the board, R.J. Parker, crew, 1998. Witnessed unauthorized passenger. And beneath it, Ryer cargo ramp tampered, possible point of disposal. It all lined up. Emily's last known location was near the starboard deck. The sound R.J. heard, the car ending up underwater miles off course, and the man in the leather coat, always present, always watching. Later that night, Kate called again. They sent over the autopsy match, she said. The body in the car, it's her. Voss closed his eyes. Emily Stokes had been found. 25 years at the bottom of the lake, her story muffled in silt and silence. But Daniel's body was still missing, and so was the man who put her there. The dive team went back down just after dawn. Sunlight shimmered on the lake's surface, but below, it was still black as ink. The old tugboat marked the site like a headstone. Elijah Mears adjusted his gear, fins slicing through the water as he sank toward the coordinates Voss had marked the night before. They hadn't fully explored the grid yet. Too many blind spots, too many ridges and valleys in the lake bed that could conceal wreckage. But they knew what they were looking for now. A second vehicle, and maybe a second body. 45 minutes into the sweep, Elijah caught it on sonar. Not large, not rusted through like the tugboat. This one had kept its shape. A compact sedan, sunken, buried halfway in lake silt. Its rear end jutted upward at a slight angle, caught on an unseen shelf of limestone. Elijah made his way closer, brushing aside clouds of sediment with one gloved hand. The windows were cracked but intact. Inside, a splash of white. A soaked heel, fabric curled like flower petals against the glass. And in the back seat, lodged beneath the upholstery, a wedding invitation. He hovered in place, staring. It was faded but legible. Gold trim. Scripted names. Emily and Daniel, June 6th, 1998. Detective Voss arrived at the recovery site within the hour, pacing the edge of the makeshift command center on a nearby boat. The evidence was bagged and lifted with care, each item sealed in airtight containers. The shoe, the invitation, a small black box containing 2 water-damaged Polaroids. Voss opened one of them under the shade of the canopy. It showed Daniel Stokes, beaming, one hand raised mid-toast. The other arm held tightly around Emily's waist. It had been taken on the ferry deck, just hours before they vanished. The box also contained something else, a key, rusted but intact. It matched the make of the submerged sedan. There were no visible remains inside. No bones, no clothing, no blood. Voss stared out over the lake. Daniel had been with her, but only Emily's body had surfaced. Back at the station, Kate sat across from Voss, eyes hollow but locked on the recovered items. She picked up the invitation, her fingers trembling. She kept one, she said. That was Emily. Always sentimental. Voss placed a hand on the table. We believe she was in that second car, likely placed there post-mortem. Kate's jaw tightened. And Daniel? We don't know yet. It's possible he was moved, or someone made sure he was never found, she finished for him. Voss hesitated, then said, There's another possibility. Someone wanted her to be found. Him, not. Why? Because one of them might have seen something they weren't supposed to. One of them might have fought back. Kate's voice dropped. And one of them had to be silenced. The lab results came back 2 days later. Traces of skin cells recovered from the sedan's interior didn't match Daniel, but they did match something else. From the lace fragment found at the tugboat. The unidentified male DNA was consistent with multiple samples recovered from other cold cases. 1994, 1992, and a third one no one had connected before. A couple who went missing in 2002 during a private lake cruise, never linked to the ferry. Same genetic profile, same ghost, same man. Voss pinned a new photo to the wall. An aged composite sketch rendered from multiple photo fragments. Leather coat, narrow eyes, deep-set jaw. No name, no address, no history. But now, a pattern of death. And for the first time, the lake was giving up its coffins, one by one. The woman lived in a quiet duplex on the outskirts of Green Bay, her name unlisted, her windows always shuttered. Kate stood on the front step with a folder tucked under her arm, her breath fogging in the cool spring air. Detective Voss had asked if she wanted company for the visit. She'd said no. Some things needed to be heard from another woman, someone who'd lost a sister. Someone who'd been left behind, too. The door creaked open. A tired face stared back. Mid-50s. Hair streaked with gray. Pale eyes that had seen more than they ever should have. Her voice came out flat. "You're Emily's sister." Kate nodded. "And you're Allison Groves. You were engaged to Jacob Halpern." The woman blinked. Once. "Come in." They sat at a kitchen table worn smooth by time. A mug of untouched tea sat between them. Allison spoke first. "Jake disappeared in '94. We'd just gotten married. Took the ferry across from Ludington. Midnight run. We were going to spend our honeymoon in Traverse City. He got up to use the restroom around 1:30. Never came back." Kate listened without interrupting. "They searched the boat, searched the lake. Told me he probably fell. I never believed it. Jake was careful, calm. He didn't drink, didn't wander." Her eyes flicked to the window as if checking for shadows. "He came back 6 years later." Kate froze. "What?" Allison nodded, slowly. 2000. My doorbell rang at 3 a.m. He was standing on the porch, half-starved, filthy. He didn't say a word for the first 4 days. Kate's hands tightened around her mug. Where had he been? "He never told me." Her voice dropped. "He couldn't." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, the edges yellowed. "He wrote this the night before he died, swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills, left this on my pillow." Kate unfolded the note. The handwriting was scrawled, unsteady. "There was someone else on the ferry that night. He watched us, waited. I saw him talking to a couple near the rear deck. Then they were gone. No one believed me. They put me somewhere underground. I don't remember where. Just that it smelled like mold and metal. I don't think he wanted me. I think he made a mistake. I ran when I could. But I was never free. He sees me in every shadow." Kate's mouth went dry. "He was held somewhere." "I think so," Allison whispered. "But whatever happened in that place, it broke something in him. He never looked me in the eye again. He flinched when the phone rang, when a car door slammed. He said the man had a boat of his own, smaller, hidden, like a shadow slipping off the ferry at night." Kate stared down at the page. "He sees me in every shadow." Emily had seen him too. Back at the station, Voss added Jacob Halpern's note to the evidence board. It connected something they hadn't considered. Not everyone had been killed. At least one person had survived, escaped, or been released. So what had changed? Why had Emily's body been left in the car while Jacob had been hidden? And who was this man, this predator, who moved between ferry decks and nighttime waters like a ghost? He walked the same docks, rode the same ferries, and every few years, he chose. Voss leaned back, eyes scanning the pattern again. Each couple, each disappearance, each witness left with only silence, until now, because this time they had a body. This time they had a survivor's voice, even if it came from the grave. And the man in the leather coat, he was still out there. The cabin sat at the edge of a dense tree line in Leelanau County, Michigan. It wasn't listed on any rental site, wasn't visible on Google Maps unless you knew where to look. But the utility records showed a steady trickle of electricity and water use dating back to the late 80s. Just enough to keep a freezer cold. Just enough to stay off-grid. Detective Riley Voss and a state trooper parked a quarter-mile down the service road, approaching the cabin on foot. No lights, no movement. But someone lived here. Voss felt it in his bones. Inside, the space was sparse. Wooden walls, concrete floors, a cot in the corner. But what drew his eyes first were the photos. Hundreds of them, pinned along the walls in tight rows, protected under sheets of plastic. Old Polaroids, disposable snapshots, black and white prints curled at the edges. All of them showed couples, brides and grooms, ferry decks, lakeside weddings, and in nearly every image, a woman looking over her shoulder, a man watching from a distance. Sometimes only his shadow appeared. Sometimes a hand. Sometimes the blurred outline of a leather coat caught mid-stride at the edge of the frame. But he was always there. They found the man in a lawn chair out back, his eyes closed, face lifted toward the morning sun. He didn't run, didn't blink. "Name?" Voss asked, voice tight. "Doesn't matter," the man replied. "We have you in photos. From 1992 to 1994 to 1998. You boarded ferries under cash aliases. You followed couples. You're in the last photo of Emily Stokes, hand on her wrist." The man opened his eyes, pale blue, flat. "I don't deny it. Where is Daniel Stokes?" Silence. Voss stepped closer. "Did you kill him?" The man's lips curved, barely. "No, but he's dead." "Likely," the man said softly, "but not by my hand." Voss felt rage rise. "Then who?" The man turned his head toward the woods. "You think I was the only one on those ferries at night?" Back at the station, Voss processed the photos, the recordings, the answers that weren't answers. The man refused to give a name. No ID, no prints on file. He said nothing incriminating. Only this. "People like me don't act alone. We watch, we choose, we offer them a door. Some walk through, some don't. But once you're on that ferry, you're already in the current." The Michigan State Police had enough to hold him. But no bodies, no murder weapon, no confession. He wouldn't be tried for killing Emily Stokes, because someone else had done that. That night, Voss laid the photos out again. One caught his eye, a reflection in a ferry window. A second man, standing behind the photographer, his shape barely visible, blurred by the glass, but unmistakable. Younger, broader, holding something, a cigarette lighter. Voss froze. He remembered the evidence bag from the submerged car, the engraved lighter they'd found near Emily's remains, and Daniel's father, Howard Stokes, had confirmed it months ago. "That's not my son's." He didn't smoke, but Emily told me someone gave her one as a joke wedding gift. Some guy from Daniel's side she didn't know well. Thought it was weird. Voss pulled up the guest list again, scanned it line by line, and there, buried at the bottom, a name handwritten in late. An addition Emily hadn't approved. Otis Weller, the best man's cousin. The man no one remembered talking to. The man who'd stood beside Daniel on the wedding deck, grinning, holding champagne, and watching. The sun was setting when they returned to the lake, burnt orange bleeding into cold gray, the surface rippling as if it too were unsettled. Otis Weller had disappeared just days after the wedding. No forwarding address, no known employer. A name barely mentioned at the reception, scrawled onto a guest list by Daniel's older brother as an afterthought. "My cousin's in town. Can he come?" Daniel had said yes. He hadn't known Otis well, but someone had. The cabin was quiet when Voss and Kate arrived, an old structure tucked into the Upper Peninsula woods, rented under a name linked to Otis's last known alias. A hiker had reported a chemical smell a week earlier, and a field team had flagged the area. Now crime scene tape fluttered at the tree line, and the coroner's van idled on the dirt road, waiting, Inside, it was cold, silent. The smell was faint but unmistakable. Mildew, metal, decay. In the corner, beneath a layer of rotted blankets and stacked wooden crates, they found it. The trap door. A hatch in the floor, crude, handmade, bolted from above. When they pried it open, the first thing that hit them wasn't the smell. It was the silence. A basement, no more than 6 feet deep, dirt floor, wooden walls soaked with groundwater, and in the center of it, a body, wrapped in old ferry uniforms, a rusted wedding band still on the left hand. The DNA confirmation took 48 hours. It was Daniel Stokes. His jaw had been broken, a rib shattered, likely from a struggle. He'd been kept alive for days, maybe longer. There were no restraints, but the bruising suggested a fall, maybe pushed, maybe thrown down. Voss stood beside the body bag in the coroner's office, eyes locked on the evidence tags. Shirt fibers matched to Emily's dress, mud consistent with lakebed silt, one shoe with a faint blood smear. Kate arrived minutes later. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stood there with her hand pressed flat against the glass, looking down at the brother-in-law she barely knew, and the man her sister had loved enough to marry on a warm June evening before vanishing into the night. They held the service a week later. By the lake, a wooden bench installed near the water's edge. 2 plaques, one for Emily, one for Daniel. Kate gave the eulogy. They boarded a ferry with love in their hearts and were met with silence, she said. But the silence doesn't win. The truth matters. The truth came back from the deep. She looked out over the lake, where the Manitou crossing still cut through the water every evening. But it wasn't just them. It was George and Natalie. It was Callie's friend. It was Jacob Halpern. It was anyone who disappeared quietly and was never found. We remember all of them now, because silence doesn't get the last word. Elijah Mears dove one final time, not for recovery, just to see, to feel, to say goodbye. He sank beneath the surface and hovered at the site where the tugboat rested, the cars now lifted, the silt still disturbed. His light swept over the emptiness where bodies once lay, shadows in the deep. But something caught his eye near the edge of the search grid. A glint of metal. He moved toward it slowly, half buried in the sand. Another camera, unopened, undisturbed. Its lens pointed upward, as if it had been watching all along. He surfaced, holding it in one hand, heart pounding. Back at the lab, they developed the final roll. Only 3 photos, all blurred, all underwater. But the last one, it showed the deck of the ferry, a wedding cake, 2 champagne glasses, and a shadow just beyond the railing. Not Otis, not the man in the leather coat. A third figure, face unseen, posture still, watching, always watching. The lake was calm again. Weeks had passed since the final recovery, and yet the shoreline still held its breath, as if remembering every footstep, every splash, every scream it had swallowed in silence. A new plaque stood near the Muskegon ferry terminal now, bolted into a polished stone bench overlooking the water. In memory of Emily and Daniel Stokes gone beneath the waves, never forgotten. June 6th, 1998. Kate visited it often. Some days she sat in silence. Other days she spoke aloud. Told them about the latest cold case Voss had opened, or about the ferry, which still made its midnight run, though now with security cameras and crew logs checked twice. She didn't expect justice to come all at once, but she believed in light now, if only because she'd seen what grew in the dark when no one looked close enough. Elijah Mears retired from diving. He left the camera, the last one, on Voss's desk, sealed in a case. "I don't need to know what's on it," he said, "but maybe you do." Voss didn't develop the film for a week. When he finally did, it held just one image. The back of the Manitou crossing, grainy and warped by water pressure. A figure barely visible, leaning against the rail. Not Otis, not the man in the leather coat. Someone else. The timestamp on the photo read June 2023, 25 years later. And someone was still riding the ferry. Still watching, still waiting.